Hello everyone and a warm welcome to my channel. In today's video, we shall learn a summary of a heartwarming story from Standard 8 Balbharti textbook Maharashtra Board. The name of the lesson is The Happy Prince. In today's video, we shall only do the summary of this lesson. The story of The Happy Prince was written by Oscar Wilde, who lived in the 19th century. He was actually an Irish poet and a playwright. He is best remembered for his novel The Picture of the Dorian Gray. The story of the Happy Prince is a very touching story. It tells us about this happy prince in a certain town and his most helpful friend, the swallow bird. The prince in the story is actually a statue covered with gold and many fine jewels, and it stands very high overlooking the city. This story has valuable messages of charity, compassion, and sacrifice. So let us understand this story through a summary that I will be doing in today's video. The story starts by describing the statue of the Happy Prince, that it stood high above the city. The statue was covered with gold, and the eyes of the statue were actually jewels of bright blue color. And there was another jewel that was red in color, which hung from its waist. The statue looked very adorning, and it was a talk in the town that whenever children would cry, they would say, "Why aren't you like the Happy Prince?" And whenever sad men looked at the statue, they would say, "At least someone in the city is happy." Actually, the story was set in a time where many people faced poverty and were in a miserable condition. Now, once what happened was there was a swallow bird that was migrating to a warmer place with its friends. But this one swallow remained behind for some time and its friends had gone away. Now, as this swallow bird kept flying on its way, it reached the city of the Happy Prince and wanted to rest for the night as it was tired flying. And so it takes shelter under the statue of the Happy Prince. Now this bird landed in between the feet of the Happy Prince and was happy that it had a golden bedroom. But as he went to sleep, a large drop of water fell on him, and it was looking at the sky to check the weather. This sounded strange to the bird as there was no cloud in the sky. Another drop fell, and the bird decided to fly away. And as he opened his wings, a third drop fell. When it looked up, the bird saw that it was the Happy Prince crying, and the bird felt sorry for the prince. The bird tells the prince that you are the Happy Prince, so why are you crying? The prince then tells the bird about his story, that when he was alive, he did not know what suffering and poverty looked like. But now, since he has been made to stand up here, all the difficulties and pain of the town are visible to him. And so, he cries every day. The prince then starts requesting the bird to complete some task for him. He tells the bird to pluck out his red jewel and take it to a poor woman. She is busy stitching a dress for the queen's maid, whose child is ill and crying out of hunger. The woman is not having any money to feed her son. She could only give the child some water from the river. But the swallow wanted to leave, as his friends were waiting for him in Egypt. But the prince requested the swallow to help out the woman and her crying child. Upon hearing this, the swallow bird feels sorry, and so he decides to stay for one more night, and that he would take the jewel tomorrow to the poor woman. The next day, the swallow bird takes the red jewel and flies to the poor woman's house. On reaching the woman's house, he sees the poor lady resting her head on the table. She is probably very tired, as she was working continuously stitching the dress for the queen's maid. The swallow places the red jewel on the table besides the poor lady. When the swallow returns back, it tells the prince that though the weather is getting cold here, but it is feeling warm from within. To which the prince replies that you are feeling like this because today you have done a good thing. Hearing this, the swallow goes to sleep. The next day, the swallow flew to the river to freshen up himself, and all those who saw the bird felt it very unusual to find this kind of bird here in the winter. Now, the bird is all set to leave for Egypt in the evening, and again the prince starts requesting the bird to stay back and asks the bird to complete another task for him. This time, the prince tells the swallow about a young writer who is trying to give an ending to his story, but he is not able to concentrate as he is feeling very cold. He has no money to buy firewood and light a fire in his room. He has also become weak out of hunger. The prince requests the bird to pluck out one of his eye, which were jewels of blue stones, so that he could buy wood and food. The swallow felt bad to pluck out the prince's eye, but the prince insisted him to take it out and give it to the young writer. When the swallow reaches the writer's house, it sees him sitting with his head in his hand, and slowly the bird places the jewel near the flower vase and goes away. When the writer puts up his head, to his astonishment, he sees the jewel on the table and immediately becomes happy, as he thinks that someone who loved his stories has gifted him this jewel quietly. Now he is able to finish his story. The next day, the swallow bird is happy. He flies over the seamen working on the ships, exclaiming that now I am going to Egypt. And in the evening it reaches to the prince just to say goodbye to him. But again, the prince requests him to stay back. But the swallow insists that now it's winter here and the snow will soon start falling and it will not be able to survive in this type of climate. It has to go to Egypt where the weather is warm. The prince starts telling the bird about a little girl standing in the square below. This girl is selling eggs, but they have all fallen on the ground and are broken. The prince tells the bird that now she has no money to take home, and so her father will hit her. The prince tells the swallow to take out his other eye and give it to the girl. But the swallow was reluctant to do so, as the prince would now become blind hereafter. The bird finally did what the prince told him to do. The bird put the jewel in the girl's hand, and she went home laughing. When the swallow returns back, it decides to stay with the prince, as he had become blind. The little bird would spend time with the prince, telling him about stories of strange lands. But the prince wanted the bird to go around the city and report about things that it would see. The bird flew around the city. It saw poor people and hungry children who were hunted away. When the swallow flew back to the prince, it told him about the misery of the people in the city. The prince felt sad and told the bird to pluck out piece by piece the gold in which he was covered with and give it to the poor. The swallow did what the prince told him. Now the prince looked grey and ugly, but the miserable people became happy, as now they had food to satisfy their hunger. By this time, the weather in the town completely changed. Snow and ice were all around the city. It was very cold, and everyone wore thick coats. The little swallow also became cold, but it did not leave the prince because it loved him very much. But it was dying. It said goodbye to the prince. The prince thought that the swallow was now on his way to Egypt. Little did he know that the bird was leaving the world. It said, "I am not going to Egypt. I am going to the house of God." Saying this, the bird fell down at the feet of the prince. At the same moment, a metal heart inside the statue cracked and broke into pieces. The next morning, important men from the city noticed the statue of the happy prince. The statue now, to them, looks like a beggar. They also notice the dead swallow and decide to make an order that birds cannot die here. So they pull down the statue of the prince and put it in the fire, and a stream of bright metal ran. The entire statue was melted except the broken heart of the prince. This seemed strange to the workers, so they decided to just throw away the heart and the bird together. Then God said to his servants to bring him the two best things in the city. And they brought him the broken heart and the dead bird. And God said, "You have brought the right things. Let the swallow sing forever in my garden, and the happy prince stand in my city of gold." So this was the summary of the lesson, The Happy Prince, from Standard 8 English Balbharti textbook. Thank you for watching.